So let's talk a little bit, because this just keeps raising the big question of what is Hashem responsible for and what's He not. So first of all, we have to know that the whole idea that Hashem knows everything, where do we know that from? Is there something in Torah that says that specifically, that Hashem knows everything? What does it say? If there's a pasuk that says that Hashem knows everything, no, in the Chumash there's some pasuk that. So in the Chumash it's actually even the opposite. As we say, it says, "Erdana va'ireg haketza'akata." Hashem says, "I have to go down to see whether it's as what it sounds like here above." It's a little bit like Moshe Rabbeinu descending the mountain to see exactly what's going on in the. He knows something's going on, but doesn't know exactly what's going on. So that's the pshat. That's how you hear it. And then you hear Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. You hear that Hashem has to go down. But what does this mean that Hashem has to go down? Do I really mean that? Does it really mean that He has a ladder and He has to climb down? Obviously, it's not up and down in that sense.
It's something we have to learn from it.
So we have to think about all these, and it says, "אתה הורית לדעת כי השם הוא אלוקים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד." And we say that Hashem is everywhere. So how can you say that He doesn't know? So this descent has to mean something else. So the person who phrased this whole theological issue in the most careful, call it, manner that we have is Rabbi Akiva. And he says in the parak of Avos that we read last Shabbos, 2 days ago, he says, "Hakol tzafui," everything is seen, even though it's translated as foreseen.
Tzafui is not hidden?
No, tzafun. Tzafun is hidden. Tzafui. Hakol tzafui. V'hareshut netuna. And free will is given, or permission is granted. Uvetuv haolam nidon. And with goodness, or with charity, the world is judged. And everything follows the many actions. Why do I say this is a careful way to say it? Because right away he tells you that, look, this is not, you can't separate the question of Hashem knowing and our free will from the question of how the world is judged and how we act. This sugya has 4 sides to it, not 2, like you might think. You might think whether Hashem knows what I do, if that affects how I act, as in and of itself one question. But he says no, it's related to also how the world is judged and also to our actions. Even though it's not clear who here is seeing and who here is acting, Rabbi Akiva doesn't say. He just says, Hakol tzafui, everything is seen. There's one commentary that says, Hakol tzafui means that a person always sees all the different options before him. It's not Hashem who sees, it's the person who sees. V'hareshut netuna, and permission is granted for him to choose whichever option he wants. That takes you away completely from the whole question that the Rambam raises here of Hashem's knowledge or omniscience and our ability to act freely. Okay? That's one parish that takes it completely into a different realm. It just says that you are always aware of all the different options. And you, me, you, every individual is always aware of all the different options that they have, and they can choose whatever they want. Complete free will. Hashem's not even involved here. When is he involved? Uvetuv olam nidon. That the world is judged with charity, meaning that even though you had a lot of free will and you're the only one responsible for what you did, still Hashem has tremendous charity, and even if you did something that's not so good, so he tries to la'atot et ze lekav zchut. He tries to turn it into something positive. So that's. But what we want to get into here is something that is related specifically to the month of Iyar, to this month, and to where free will really is. So this is it's a huge, you could give 10 courses just on this question. Where is free will according to Torah? Because there are many, many different verses that go in different directions. And the Rishonim and the Achronim discuss this. And it's one of these things that everybody has to say something about, and everybody has something very smart to say about. So you're stuck in the middle of a big forest with a lot of trees. It's not clear how you can make any sense of it. So we can't do everything, but let's do something that's related to the month of Iyar. The month of Iyar really is a month of tzipiyah. Tzipiyah is like tzafui. Akol tzafui. You're waiting for something. Tzafui means to see, but it also means to be in anticipation. Akol tzafui is like saying, I'm always anticipating. So you could be anticipating like in English, where anticipating means I can anticipate where you're going to do. But here, what we're anticipating is Matan Torah. Or this week, we're anticipating the revelation of the pnimius of the Torah, the inner dimension of the Torah that was given by Rashbi. So where's the free will that comes out of anticipation? We'll see that it's specifically in the month of Iyar. Free will, what does free will really mean? It means that Hashem created the world in such a way that every one of us is a partner in where it will go and how it will advance. What does it mean to be a partner? I can't create the world. I certainly can't keep it going. But that means an awakening. When is the greatest awakening from below? It's in this month, the month of Iyar. Okay. Why Sfirat Omer? Because really, what did he do on Pesach? He showed us, here's everything. And then he took it away. It's like, there's a mashal in Chassidus of a person who was lowered into a deep well, and he was there for a long time. Suddenly somebody came along, and he pulled him out. And he told him, look at what the world looks like. And then he put him back in. And said, this time you climb out by yourself. So that's what Hashem did to us. On Pesach, he showed us, this is what it means to be free. This is what it means to be with me. Now you want to have this? If I give it to you, you'll throw it away. You won't do anything with it. So it's up to you. This time you climb out of where you are. You climb out of... Right? That makes you a partner in it. It doesn't mean that freedom is something that you made. It just means that you have a part in obtaining it, in getting to it. So the month that has the most itorerut, has the most willingness on Hashem's part to give us space to awaken ourselves, to seek to motivate ourselves, is this month. Why? Because it's in the middle of Pesach and Matan Torah. Torah, I can't give myself. I don't know how to make Torah. I don't know how to write it. At most, I can make it to Har Sinai to receive it. But Hashem says, I'll give it to you if you're willing to make the journey. If you're willing to make the journey, I'll give it to you. But it's up to you. Otherwise, if I only give it to you and there's no journey on your part, it'll be another book in the bookshelf. It'll be there. And you'll do something. I'm saying, okay, very nice. We have a Torah. What does it mean to me? Not very much, because I didn't work for it. I didn't do anything for it. So let's see how this whole thing works. Out of the months, we know that they correspond to the tribes based on how they were. So this is the month of Yisachar. Yudah is Nisan, and Yisachar is Iyar, and then Zvulun is Zvulun he's Sivan. And it's almost the opposite from what you would think, because what is Yisachar? Yisachar is thought. It says that that's his chush, that's his special faculty. When would I have thought that thought would be? I might have thought that it should be in Sivan, because that's when we received the Torah. Zvulun, who's in Sivan, his special faculty is progress or moving. So certainly I would have thought that's if I'm saying that this is the month of walking from Egypt to Mount Sinai, so this should have been the month of walking, the month of progress. But somehow it's switched. That this month is a month of thought, and the next month is the month of progress, of action, in the sense of progress. Chusha alicha, it's called. So the simple explanation is that from the moment we have Torah, we have how to walk. Before that, you're not really walking. Without Torah, you're actually standing still. Say it another way, a person could feel that he's making tremendous progress. And as his life progresses, he's doing a lot of things and so on. And then he comes to the end of his life, and he looks back, and he says, okay, I want to take everything that I did with me. And they tell him, look, there's a doorway here. There are only two types of things can get through. Torah and Masim Tovim. Only the Torah and good deeds that you did, they're the only things that go through this filter. So you can't, all the things that you thought you made progress, that's not progress. It was progress then, that's what you thought it was. But it's not eternal progress. So if you want eternal progress, that's only through Torah. So that's okay. But there's a deeper sense to this. And it's trying to say that we usually think of free will as free will to act. That free will is how I act.
Isn't it also how I think?
But it's not also how I think, but it's predominantly how I think. That really the only thing that's really free is my thought. My actions are always limited. It's true that if I put my mind to it, I might be able to break a lot of barriers even in action.
No, Viktor Frankl was...
Right, but in the end, it's only how I think. Yeah. Let's look at Rabbi Akiva's statement. Akol tzafui, everything is seen. V'arashut netuna, and there's freedom given, or permission is granted. That's the free will part. The second part is the free will. Then it says everything is judged with goodness. And finally, and everything follows the multitudes of actions. So what do we have here? We have here 4 parts that they correspond to Yud Kei Vav Kei, to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. So Akol Tzafui is like Chochma, is the Yud, which is to see. Chochma is always the eyes. Like it says that the Chachamim, they're the Einei Ha'edah, they're the eyes of the congregation. But Chochma in general is to see. And then Hareshut Netuna, that's Bina, that's the Hey. What is it saying? It's Rabbi Akiva is telling me that the freedom of will, or the permission that's granted, is in the Bina, is in the thought. And that's where there's free will. And then he says, the Vav is that Hashem judges, or the world is judged, with goodness. What could that be? So we'll see in a moment what that goodness might be. And finally, the final Hey, which is connected to the first Hey, is, and everything follows the multitude of actions. Which means that there is a connection between how I think and what I do. But I first have to be free in my thought. If my thought has been rectified, and we'll see in a moment what that means, then the actions can follow and be free also. And there can be many, many actions in the direction that I want. But if my thought isn't free, then it's very difficult for me to act in the way that I'd like to. So the freedom, even though people think about freedom of will, free will, as going straight to action, what Rabbi Akiva is saying here, if we look at it by corresponding it to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, what he's saying is that thought is where the freedom really is. And that's how the Zohar sees it also, because the Zohar says that Bina, that the first hey, of Hashem's name, that's Bina, or Yovel sometimes it's called. In the Torah it's called the Yuvla. What is a Yovel? We're going to read about that in this week's Parsha. That's why we're talking about this also. It's always the Parsha that's related to Rashbi. What we're trying to get at is that Rashbi frees the mind. So, what do we read about the Jubilee year? The Jubilee year is the Bina. Why? Because we have this concept of Chamishim Sharei Bina, 50 gates of understanding. So understanding is related to the 50th. In this case, the 50th year. And what do you do on the 50th year? Everybody goes free. Everybody who's indentured in some way. There's 2 things that are indentured in the world. Chazal all the time bring them in the Gemara. They're always brought together. Land and servants and slaves. They're considered property that's indentured to the person. But on the Yovel, on the 50th year, even the land goes back to its original owner. Certainly, the people go back to their original owners. Who's the original owner? Hashem. So that's what it means to be free. That you go back to your original owner or go back to Hashem. So the 50th, the Hey, the Bina, it's called the world of freedom in Zohar. Alma de Chiru. A world of freedom. Why? Chiru. Chet Yud Reish Vav. It's almost like in Hebrew, Chirut. Actually, I think the word in Hebrew is a little bit difficult to explain. The word in Aramaic is Chiru. So, what he's telling me is that the freedom starts in the mind. That's what Hashem gave you that's free. And if that's free, then it can follow that your actions can be free also. But it depends on a multitude of actions, what he says. Don't think that just one time will make it free. It could be that you have to do it multiple times. Whatever this thing that you're thinking of that represents your freedom of thought, it might be that you have to repeat it 1,000,000 times. In action. That's what the Rebbe called that Eichus, that Kamus macht Eichus. That the quantity makes quality. That you may have to repeat something many, many, many times until you get to the quality of freedom that you have in your mind. The first time you do it, you're not free yet. The second time you do it, you're not free yet either. So
what's an example of something that somebody would do many times to be free?
So that's how the Rambam describes the whole rectification of the psyche. That whatever thing you need to rectify in your psyche, you just have to repeat it a lot of times. For instance,
like a person who wants to play an instrument really well. How
to become free.
Hours of practice and discipline, repetition, until they're playing from a place of freedom.
So that's also true. The simple example the Rambam gives is that a person wants to give tzedakah and he feels that he's stingy. And he can't. He finds it difficult. He says, give once, give twice, give 3 times, 4 times. Eventually you will free yourself from the bonds of your psyche, of how you were born. Because nature, by definition, is not free. Nature, by definition, is lawful. It's stuck in laws. There's no real freedom in nature. You can't decide to go against nature. So it's really the rectification of nature is to reach its freedom, a free state inside.
You know how we always learn that you're not responsible for your first reaction, because that's kind of automatic, but then you can, so are you saying that eventually you could come to a place where that wouldn't even be your first reaction?
Right. Your first reaction would be rectified because you've done it sometimes. So let's see, you just said something very important that the Alter Rebbe says. He says, it says in Yeshaya, Ki lo machshavotachem machshavotai v'lo ma'asechem ma'asai, that your thoughts are not my thoughts. Meaning Hashem is saying to us, your thoughts are not my thoughts, and your actions are not my actions. So the Alter Rebbe says, the Gemara already says, how should you read this? He says, because your thoughts are not my thoughts, therefore your actions are not my actions. The Gemara means to say that, why do you sin? Because you didn't learn what I taught you. If you would have thought about what I said in the Torah, you wouldn't have done the wrong thing. But the Alter Rebbe reads it a little bit differently, like Hasidic reading, which is the depth of it. He says, if you would think like me, you could act like me. Hashem is free in his actions. So why are you, Am Yisrael, not free? Why can't you act freely? Because you don't think like me. How should you think like me? You have to think freely. What does it mean to think freely? Only the Torah opens thought so that a person can be free in his thought. The Torah is the biggest social critique ever written. Because it's all social critique from beginning to end. It's almost nothing that you see in the world is as it should be. And even things that people think, oh, they're very, very positive because they've really benefited. They've really been good for humanity. Like, let's say democracy, which a lot of people rightfully think has ushered in a new era in human existence, and it's so much better than everything that was before. A lot of people think this. Maybe even the majority of people in the world. Even Rocket Man has come to that conclusion. Yeah. I don't know about democracy, but he's come to some conclusion, that's for sure. So, and yet Torah says, hold on. It's very good, it's very nice, but I have a lot of critique here. Why do I have critique? Because the Torah always teaches you how to open your mind. If somebody says one side, there's also another side. Let's see what the other side says. An antithesis to what the world thinks. Torah was born from civil disobedience. That's what it's born from. Okay. Disobedience against if Moshe Rabbeinu would not have come, so we would have remained. And what did he come for? To give us Torah. He didn't come to free us from Egypt. He came with this crazy idea that they shouldn't be slaves. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Okay. If we take this one more step, so we can also understand the full picture here. First, that everything is foreseen, and then that permission is granted, and then that the world is judged with goodness, and that everything follows the many actions. We said that this month is the month of thought, which is the second part here, that the freedom of will. And we said, what does freedom of will really mean? It means that I'm free to think however I want. What's the main thing that I get to choose in my thoughts? If everything is shown to me, what's the main thing that I get to choose? So somebody might say, you get to choose between true and false. Maybe you get to choose between good and evil. But in the word thought itself, again, this month's sense, it's a faculty in the psyche, is called machshava. So in this word itself, there's concealed what we really choose between. What you can always choose between. Doesn't matter how smart you are, and it doesn't matter even how rectified you are. How many mitzvahs you've already done, how rectified your psyche is. It doesn't even matter what your history is. It doesn't matter if you've had a good life or a poor life. What do I get to choose between? So it says that the word machshava can be permuted to spell besimcha, with joy. The main, and that's what we say, that the inner quality of binah is simcha, like ema banim smicha. That the core of thought in the end is not mathematics, and it's not biology, and it's not sociology. The core of thought in the end is whether I'm going to think joyous thoughts or the opposite. That's the core of my free will. If I can fill myself with joyous thoughts, that's why every year when Rav Ginsburg teaches this, he always ends up in some way that Rashbi is the happy Rebbe. It's always about that. Mm-hmm. It connects to a lot of things, but it's like saying that this whole month of Iyar, but especially this week, the week of Hod, which is really what rectifies the Binah. This week is all about joy, and it doesn't mean it's joyous. On the contrary, it's like a time of the year where things are a little complex. Is it some kind of mourning? Is it some kind of, what is this? It's not clear. It's not exactly a mourning period. It's not exactly a happy period. It's not clear. But what is it trying to say? It's setting you up to say you have to decide what this is. Like everything in your life. The real choice that you have is whether you're going to fill your mind with joy or you're going to fill it with sadness. That's really the freedom of thought that we have. Even when you say meaning, it doesn't capture this point. Because when you say that a person has to fill his mind with meaning, so meaning is many things. Could be that this is the meaning, that's the meaning. So how can I know which one's the right meaning? How can I choose between the different meanings that I can give to what I'm experiencing? I have to choose the one that gives me joy, that makes me joyous. And again, why does Hashem have to give me free will here? Because this is the hardest this is the hardest thing in life. But he says, but from there, if you can choose simcha, then everything else will flow out of that. Then your actions will also be rectified. If you can be happy, then happy in the sense of inner happiness, inner joy, then shlemut ha'maaseh will follow. Then you'll act also in the right way. It's also like you'll learn the right way. But if what you're looking for, it's all rigged, it's all I'm stuck here, all these things. I'm at a loss. There's no joy here. So you're locked. You've made a choice. It's true. You've sort of made a choice, but everything will follow from there.
It seems like somebody, who's in an unrectified state, what they think will make them joyful, could be something that's
addiction.
So
what happens then there?
It doesn't really make him joyful. He knows it. She gave addiction as an example. The person knows that it's not followed by a lot of joy.
Not only that, the thoughts are not joyful thoughts that lead to that, right?
So if you're in a situation that's challenging, your circumstances are challenging, and if you, the natural response, obviously emotion
So if that's what you need, if you need to fantasize an outcome to be joyous, fine. But the idea here is that the joy is not dependent at all on whether it'll be like joy is right now at this moment. Meaning the thought should be filled with joy. Right, at this moment. That itself, that's called amtakata dinim b'shorsham. Rectifying the harsh judgments at their source. What's the source of judgment? It says in the Bina. Understanding, in the Zohar it says, mina dinim mitarim. From there, that's where the harsh judgments in life, in myself, everything comes from. So if I can sweeten the Bina itself, what does it mean to sweeten it? Just be joyful in my thought. Sometimes it's not so nice if a person walks around with a stupid smile on their face and everything. But in my thought, if I'm like that, so it's hard for somebody to come and say, "What are you doing?" But and Chassidus also says that you have to also have in your heart you can cry. That's you don't cry for yourself. You cry for Am Yisrael, for the Shechina. But in your thought, you're always on your face. You're always pleasantly. I don't know if the word is amused, but you're pleasantly joyful.
Well, it's both sides of the heart, Rabbi.
And the volume, both sides.
Weeping on one side and chedva on the other.
Good. And the face, it should be. The face should be joyful. Okay, so now let's see how this works. So, akol tzafui, that everything is foreseen or seen. That's the month of Nisan. That's what we meant when we said that Hashem showed us. Here's what it looks like to be with me. On Passover, He showed us. He came down Himself and said, "This is what you get if you're with me." And then on Iyar, He gives us the free will to advance ourselves, to move forward. And then on Sivan, so that's the Reshut Netuna, the second part. The third part, V'ubetuva olam nidon, that the world is judged by goodness. So what do we mean by goodness? We said that we have to explain this. So the goodness is the Torah, en tov el Torah. In fact, in Rabbi Akiva's in the Mishnah, this Mishnah starts just Rabbi Akiva saying, "Akol tzafui v'rashut netuna v'tuva olam nidon v'akol olech acharov v'maaseh." It doesn't say that he said this. It says Rabbi Akiva said in the previous Mishnah. And how does the previous Mishnah start? It says, "Chaviv adam shenivra b'tzelem." That endeared is man that he was created in the image of Hashem. Chavivin Yisrael, and so on. Why? She Torah nitna lehem. That we're more endeared. Why are we more endeared? Because Hashem gave us the Torah. And then he says, "Akol tzafui v'arshut netuna v'tuva olam nidon." So he's talking about the Torah itself. That v'tuva olam nidon, that's the month of Sivan. So we have here the first three parts. What would then be the fourth part? V'akol acharov v'maaseh. That's the month of Tammuz. What happened in Tammuz in the first year? They came out of Egypt. Well, not the first year, the second year. Second year. Chet HaMeraglim was in the month of Tammuz, the second year. There wasn't good maaseh there. Something was wrong. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. They messed up. But that was supposed to be the month of the most action. And when you think about it in the agricultural cycle, Tammuz is the month that has the most action. It's the month that you work the hardest. It's a month of action. But if this is true, that these 4 months they follow this idea from Rabbi Akiva, so since we have 12 months, so it probably repeats twice more. We have 4 months that they follow these 4 ideas. הכל צפוי והרשות נתונה וטוב העולם נידון והכל הולך אחר רוב המעשה. And then, so now, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan are the next four. So Av itself, it's chush is chush hariyah. It's chush is seeing. Hakol tzafui.
Av is what?
The month of Av, its faculty is the sense of sight. Chush hariyah. It's to see.
Yeah.
Re'iyah, to see. And then Elul becomes the month of free will, of machshava. So how do we see that in Elul? It's a month of doing tshuva. It's mamish bina. It's mamish the month of tshuva. Tshuva is bina. And it's a month of healing also, just like Iyar. Because in Elul, it's the healing of the nefesh, of the soul. In Iyar, it's the healing of the body. Ani Hashem rofecha. And in Elul, we heal the psyche with tshuva. And then what is betuva olam nidon? That's Tishrei. And the world is judged. When is the world judged? On Tishrei. It's a month of both on the 1st of Tishrei, and then again during the Sukkot, when the world is judged for water, especially on the 7th day of Sukkot. And then again we have V'akol acharov ha'maaseh. Sorry?
What's
The chush of... hold on. I can be, I don't remember.
Such Shmiyah.
No, Shmiyah is
With tongue?
no, Ken Tammuz. No? Drawing a blank. We'll see in a second.
Okay.
Maybe I'll remember. And then Cheshvan is the month of action. Why do we call it the month of action? Because you finish all the holidays, and again you go to, it's called the Yaakov Alach Ladorko. He goes off to do his thing, whatever he wants to do. And so now we have to do the last four, so we'll do them quickly. So Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar are also Yud Kei Vav Kei in this sense. So the month of having free will is Tevet according to this. Kislev would be that you see everything, and Tevet would be that you have freedom of will. So how can these two be explained? What's the connection? So here we learn something, one of the most important things that can be learned about free will. And I don't know if you've been following this, but we put out a couple of responsa like from Rav Ginsburg about yoga recently. I always hate the controversial topics, but at some point it had to explode. I didn't. It wasn't my my idea to do it, but it came out, and it's had a lot of echo, call from Ol Chazel, like returning light from the world. And the way that a lot of people see it is that Yiddishkeit is against the body, because that's how it's viewed most of the time. That here we have all these, all this incredibly sensitive, call it cultures, that are sensitive to the body, and we want to engage in this. And then the rabbis come and they say it's off limits.
What?
The rabbis come and they say don't do this. It's off limits. So people understand it as as being against the body. And if you're against the body, so automatically you're also against women.
Right.
No, the Piyam have not here. It's very clear. It's against the philosophy and it's based on it. He made it very clear.
But that's how automatically there's like this trigger sequence in the psyche that if you're against the body, you're against women also. It goes together. Because we know that women are more physical than men are. They live their bodies much more than men. Healthy men and healthy women like perfectly healthy, the amount of consciousness that goes towards the body is different. So here we have a tremendous principle to show how this is not true. By the way, Chaz v'shalom, I'm not comparing in any way, just telling you that one of the deepest understandings of what the Nazi philosophy was about was that Jews are against the body. It's one of the deepest explanations of why they focused on us more than anybody else. Everything that was weird in their eyes, they wanted to kill, because they had this. This goes back to a lot of Goethe, a lot of Goethe and Schelling. You have to read them to understand where they were coming from. But specifically the Jews, because they said we don't connect to the physical world. We're too spiritual in the bad sense, like in the mental sense, in the intellectual sense. And the Eastern spirituality is very physical. It's finding the spiritual in the physical. So they were also very influenced. By the way, that's where they took their symbol from, and it's not by mistake that they took it from there, because they were very influenced. I'm not saying that the Hindus or Buddhists hate Jews. They don't at all. But the Nazis borrowed it from there, saying this is the type of spirituality, more like
reverse the direction.
They reverse the direction, but it's a pagan philosophy. In the end, it's a pagan form of seeing man's role in the world. So, without getting into that, at least not deeply, what we learn here, if Tevet is the month of free will, there's nothing goes on in Tevet. Anybody know of a holiday in Tevet?
It's not
Fast day, at the most. There's no holiday, at least not now. There used to be, in the time of the Second Temple there was, but now there's no holiday. But what do Chazal say about this month? It's very interesting.
The body warms the body.
Right, that the body enjoys the body. Because of the cold outside, people gather together and they enjoy each other's bodily warmth. But it's much more than that. Tevet itself equals 411, which is the value of Tohu. Oh, thank you. So somebody just told me Tishrei is Mishush, is feeling, sensing with the, and Cheshvan, of course, is Reach, and then Kislev is sleep, and Tevet is Roges, is anger. But it's what we call righteous indignation, right? It's like Olam Yargiz Adam Yetzer Tov Al Yetzerah. And then Shvat is eating, and Adar is laughter. So that's in terms of the senses. We covered all of them. But what does it mean that it's Tohu? What was Tohu? Tohu was formless matter. That a person, Rashi says, he looks at it, Toheu Vohe. He doesn't know what this is. So he sees something, there's matter there, but it doesn't have a form. So it's body in its purity, without any form even. That's the month of Tevet. What do we have in Tevet the most, in Eretz Yisrael at least? A lot of Gashmius. Rain, Geshem. And it's the month of the body. And it's the one that relates to freedom of will.
Why is it formless body?
What?
Why does it relate to freedom?
Because it's the second one. We said it's Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar. These are the four. And if we follow the same order, so Hareshut Netuna, that permission is granted, is specifically in the body. It's specifically in, the choice is related to the body.
What's it to do with rain?
The rain, I just mentioned that in Eretz Yisrael, the weather is such that there's a lot of rain. Rain in Hebrew means physicality. Gashmiut. Means the word is Geshem, and then the translators of the Rambam, they took that word and they turned it into the word that means corporeality or physicality.
Well, what does that mean?
Oh, so when we say that Hashem chose us, so what do we mean? What did He choose? He says He chose our bodies. He didn't choose our souls. Why did He not choose our souls? Because there's no need to.
God didn't choose our souls.
No, there's no need to. Why don't I need to choose the Jewish soul? Because it's a different thing altogether. I don't need to choose it. It stands out. It's different. But in the body, we're all the same. There's no difference between human beings. Physically, we're all the same. You cut us, we bleed the same way. So here is where choice has to come, and specifically, even body without form. If there's form, if you say, well, did he choose people or animals? So how can you compare it? The level of complexity of the human mind and the human being. So really, when he's choosing the body, it's almost like a figureless, formless body. That's why he says that a person is tohe uvohe, doesn't know what this is. It's the very essence of who I am. The very formless essence of being. What does that sound? So if you connect to the body the right way, what you will feel is that this is where all the freedom of will begins. That's how you become free.
It's the other way around.
Why?
Before you said freedom of action comes from freedom of the will.
Can.
Action in the body.
No, that's already using that. That's already giving it form. Here we're saying the body without form, without anything, without anything special. That's why one of the interesting things is when Rav Ginsburg taught his movements, all the different types of movements. So anybody who's ever done the Oriental types of movements, whether it be Tai Chi or whatever else it is, well, right away you say, but this is not at the same level at all of movement. That one, it takes years to master. And here, these are like childish, almost like nothing. And I remember the first time he taught us, he has a big kavana called the kavana of the angels. It's called the Ichuda Afifa. It's like how to fly like an angel. I said, okay, it's nothing. Trust me. It's like three simple motions. And you kind of say, what are you doing? This doesn't compare to everything that they do. Because he's saying it's not the form that you instill into it. On the contrary, those forms that they want to give the body, that's where all the trouble begins. The forms that they want to make you into a cat, into a monkey, into a whatever, into a sail ship, whatever it is. It's like trying to give form to the body, which is not where the free will comes from. The free will comes because Hashem chose this body in its utter formless state. He's saying the choice is, when Hashem chose the Jewish people, He didn't choose us because of our actions. He didn't choose us because of our minds. He didn't choose us because of our piety. He says real choice is when there's no form.
So what makes
in the same way, Hashem's choice. It's just choice.
Have the same formless bodies.
Right? He says this one I want and this one. What's a good example? A good example is like children. A child, when he's born, he's formless. He can even be mamish formless. Chas v'shalom. And yet, the parents will still love him. And they'll love him more than they'll love any other child. Why? Because somehow, this I'm connected to. There's no good reason for it. You say for the mother because it's this, for that. Okay, those are all parenthood issues. But in the end, why are you connected to? There's no reason for it. And you can't take it away because there's no reason. It doesn't matter if it's like this or it's like that. It's unconditional love. Unconditional attachment. What am I attached to? The very being of this creature. It's the being of it. It doesn't matter that it can't speak, it can't talk. It's nothing. It's a piece of flesh almost. But I'm connected to it. In that sense, Hashem connects to it. That's why Hashem showed to choose means to have freedom. So He chose it by choosing the Jewish people, saying there's no reason for it at all. You can never find a reason. But this is what my choice is. And to show you that there's no reason, it's in the body. And all the bodies are the same. There's no difference. And not only the body, almost like the formless body. Like, it's not because you're taller, stronger, more... He says it, it's not... Not because you're so many has Hashem chosen you. Not because your body is stronger, not because you're many, not because any of these things. It's the formless being of the body itself. The body, again, it's not the... Don't come and say, okay, this is holy. It's a parable. It's a metaphor. If you can connect to the body formless, then you understand what it means that Hashem chose us for no visible reason.
That's what it means to connect to the body in the right way. To
Okay.
connect to the body formless.
Exactly, formless. And so the motions that you do, they almost come out of the formlessness, not the opposite. You're not trying to give the body form and that way rectify it. It's almost the opposite. That when I connect to the formless body the way that Hashem chose me, then I act with freedom. I take Hashem's freedom and it affects me, so I can act freely. In that sense, like to be joyous, like simcha, is to be formless matter. How can I be besimcha? I have to strip it away. I have to strip my reality away, strip away from it all the machshavot, all the negative thoughts that have crept on it. And if I can just see it for what it is, it can be full of joy. In the same way that a mother gets joy from a baby that has no form, that is nothing yet. It doesn't speak. It doesn't. All it does is cry.
Is it the same thing like when you get to know someone really well, that after a while you don't even see what they look like? It's
Right,
so
right,
deep.
right,
You
right,
don't
right.
even know what they look
Right.
like. The same
It's one of the things that's so hard to explain to young men, especially, is that eventually your relationship will become one where it is just the body itself. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Like to get that, you need to go through. It's a long process.
in any relationship. I hear that.
In any relationship, it becomes the being of the person himself, and you experience the being not through the spirit. It's one of the main things that the chokhmah is like spirit, and bina is like the body. That's why we say that bina yitaran nitna ba'isha, that woman has an extra measure of bina. Why? Because it says vayiven Hashem Elokim et hatzela, that He built the side up. He built it, meaning as a body. The body itself came from Hashem. But where did Adam's body come from? From the earth. But Hashem took whatever that was and He built it up. It's more being than the male body.
It's like when you make the connection with a person through whatever time and years, and then you don't see what they like, and from there you build a new vision. You suddenly see.
And then it can
that
receive
you
form.
build
And then it can
the
receive
from
form.
that
Right.
place.
Right.
So that's
In that sense, why did Hashem choose us? Because His choice made us into the possible human. It's like putty. In the same way that's what He wanted from Adam. First He created him a golem. It says, a golem just means like a mound of earth. Like it's just like a piece of clay. And then He added the form. In the same way, that's what He saw in the Jewish people. He saw that there's here, when He chose us, again, it could be, from the soul we have a lot more. But when we're talking about what did He choose, He chose the physical aspect, the being itself, and from there everything becomes open. So that's where the freedom of will is. We'll just end with one more small thing. In Sivan we have Uvetuva Olam Nidon, that the Torah was given. Then we said that in Tishrei that's the judging of the world. What is it in Shvat? And this also explains Tishrei even better. Then in Shvat, Betuv, we said Tuv is Torah. So in Shvat we received the Torah again. Right? How did we receive the Torah again in Shvat? Because in Shvat, from Rosh Chodesh Shvat, from the first day of Shvat until the seventh day of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the book of Dvarim, Mishnah Torah. It's almost like a second giving of Torah. It's also Hashem told him what to say, but it's the Shekhinah speaking out of his mouth. Yeah, so it means I probably need to go. So by Tishrei, it's also the same thing. We were also given the Torah in Tishrei. Why were we given the Torah in Tishrei? Because that's when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai on Yom Kippur. He came with the second tablets. So these 3 months, they're like the giving of the Torah. And then Adar comes back again to a month of action. So the simple action is, of course, cleaning for Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we don't want to go there. Because, thankfully, we are almost the furthest away from Adar that we can be in that sense. But the idea here of action is that Adar doesn't, it's called, what's a person who wants to see success in his actions, he should latad baim edel. Edel is the name of a tree. So it's a type of tree that is considered to be like a symbol of success in a person's actions. So there's a lot more to be said here. But the main thing is about freedom of will. Recap, just conclude with this. That the freedom of will that we have is, first of all, in being joyful. That's the real freedom of will. And from there, everything else stems. But not to think about it that I'm free to do anything I want, or even if you just start from I'm free to be joyful, then everything else can happen. But if I'm not able to exercise my freedom there, I probably won't be able to exercise it in action or in my thoughts, my regular thoughts. It has to be given from the simcha. So that's what Rashbi wanted to teach us. That's the main thing. He wants to free the mind. Free the mind, it means to make you joyful. The main thing that Rashbi changed is, what does the day of passing from the world mean? And until Rashbi, it was a day of grieving. But Rashbi made it into a joyful day. He said, the day that I pass from the world is a day in which the whole world will rejoice. He was the first one whose Hilula, whose day of passing became a party. Hilula literally means a wedding. It means that it's a party. So even something like that, he has the power to transform, to turn the bitterness into sweetness. Okay. So I just want to show you what happens at the end. Yeah.
So when you were saying we can habituate ourselves to choose.
So I hit finish.